Welcome to the Life with Grief podcast. I'm your host, grief and soul purpose coach, and fellow griever, Tara Accardo. Hey, y'all. Welcome back to the Life with Grief podcast. In this episode, we're sitting down with Linda Henderson, a retired nurse, author, and grieving mother who so vulnerably shares her journey of the devastating loss of her daughter, Andrea. In this episode, we are exploring Linda's experience with prolonged and complicated grief, the emotional and physical toll of losing a child or just someone that we love so dearly, how she found her way forward using her AAA method, acknowledgement, action, and appreciation. You will definitely want to hear all about that, so stay tuned. The power of small intentional steps in healing our grief, how Linda leaned on support systems and grief tools that made a meaningful difference in her life. And we also talk about her memoir, The Road of Love and Hope, A Journey of Child Loss. Even if you're not coping with the specific loss of a child, I know you are going to get so much value out of this powerful conversation. There are so many universal topics and things about grief that Linda and I get into in this episode. And this conversation is chock full of profound wisdom, validation, and gentle reminders that healing, while never linear, is possible. Linda, welcome to the Life with Grief podcast. I am so honored to have you here today. And when we first started coordinating and kind of corresponding outside of our conversation here today, I was really just, as I mentioned to you, very touched by your story. And it really, having a daughter now myself, really tugged at my heartstrings, to say the very least. But I just am also very inspired by you and everything that you are doing with this loss in your life. And you are, really the essence of kind of turning pain into purpose, if you will. And you're doing that through writing. So I'm excited to dig into all of that. But first and foremost, welcome to the podcast. I'm happy to have you.
Thank you so much. It is my honor to be here, and it's always a pleasure to share what I call my love story. It's a love
Oh, I
story
love that.
about my daughter and myself, and
Yeah.
basically that's what it's about. So, of
Yeah.
course, I love to talk about my daughter.
Oh,
And,
I know, right? That's the same way with my
yeah.
parents. Any excuse, give me any excuse. I'll tell you all about them. Well, that being said, first of all, I love to kind of have you just introduce yourself a little bit and just tell listeners here who maybe don't know you just a little bit about yourself. It's so funny. I ask this question, and so often people are like, kind of put on the spot because I'm like, what do you do for fun? What hobbies do you have? Any fun facts about yourself? And they're like, what do I do for fun? I don't know, like, but just anything anyone maybe, can just know about you to get to know you a little better.
Well, my name is Linda. I am 70 years young,
Love
and
that.
I'm happily married to the most amazing man for 28 years.
Wow.
And we have a blended family of 5 adult grown children, 4 here on earth and 1 in heaven. We
Mhm.
have 10 grandchildren and 5 great grandchildren.
Oh my gosh.
My oldest granddaughter lives with me, so she just had a baby and he's 6 weeks old. So I get snuggled
Wow.
every day.
Oh, I
Uh,
love that.
I'm a retired nurse of 37 years.
Mm.
I'm proud to say I'm an author, something I thought I would never do. And I
Yeah.
wrote my book, memoir, The Road of Love and Hope. And it is about my grief journey, my journey of child loss and grief.
Mhm.
And last but not least, I'm a bereaved mom.
Yeah.
And after writing my book, I have become passionate to reach out, tell my story to as many people as I can, and provide inspiration, hope, and empowerment.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's my new mission and my new purpose in life is to just every day think about what door is going to open for me now, because I'm going to walk right in any opportunity that I get. And in my free time, I have my 2 little puppies and I play with them.
Amazing. Who doesn't? I Puppies make life just so happy
I call them
and
puppies.
chaotic.
They're actually 4 years old, but they're my babies. So, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I
I
don't
still can
have any children. I mean, I have my grandchild here. She's
yeah.
27, but for my husband and I, that's our world, our 2 little babies.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, and I'm sure they keep your hands full. Amongst all of your grandkids and everything as well, so that sounds
That's
very
right.
eventful.
Yeah.
Well, let's dig into your journey of grief and loss. That's why we're here, right? So, in as much or little detail as you wanna provide, I always wanna really let, guests kind of, guide the conversation in that way. I don't want you to feel like you have to share anything you're not comfortable with, but, just talk to us a little bit about the death of your daughter and just your journey with grief and loss.
Well, my daughter, Andrea, was 27 years old. She was, I say, at the prime of her life. She fell in love, experienced that beautiful wedding, and built a house, had a 2-year-old little boy at home, was pregnant with her second baby.
Mhm.
She had a career. She was a social worker. She was working with young girls in our community between the ages of 15 and 18 at a group home. This was kind of like the end of the road for them. They'd been through the foster system, and this was it. And so she was a teacher for their literacy program called New Directions, and she taught them that all the reading levels were different, and it was just about letting these girls learning teaching them to be good citizens of society. And so she built her house in August of 2011. On December 20th, 2011, she was out in the community with her coworker, and they were very pleased because they had raised money with these two girls in particular, and they were going to adopt a child. And so it was all about these girls giving back and flourishing, in their situation. And so they had made a call to their main office and said, "Look, this is what we've done. These girls are doing great." They were on their way back to their place of employment, about 3 blocks away, and they were stopped waiting to turn left. Andrea was a passenger, and her coworker was the driver. And
Mhm.
a transport truck driver who was texting and driving, having an argument with his girlfriend, hit them from behind, pushed them into the oncoming traffic, where they were hit yet again, T-boned, and Andrea and her coworker were killed instantly. And that's the day that my life was shattered before
Of
me,
course.
on the
Yeah.
ground, and I had to rebuild my life from the ground up. I didn't know how I was going to breathe from one breath to the next. I just
Yep.
wanted to die. I didn't want to
Yeah.
live. I wanted to be with her. And
Mhm.
that's how I entered onto this road of grief. I had experienced grief with the loss of my mother.
Mhm.
She was only 60, but it's grief is grief. But when it comes to losing your child, it's the most profound pain that a mother can endure. And
Yes. I have no doubt. Yeah, I always say, there's no comparing grief and all of that, and there's not, but since becoming a mother myself,
mhm.
I almost get choked up even just talking about it. I mean, if I can just begin to imagine the pain that you must have felt in that moment and every single moment after. It's just, as so many people say, it's just so out of the natural order of things, and you're never really the same person, after any death in the of course, but like there's really almost like no words for it. It's really hard to articulate that loss.
It's life altering, that's for
Yes,
sure.
it
And
is.
I will grieve her until my last breath. That's the thing. Society, we need to do a lot more, and this is part of why I do what I do, is to
Mhm.
increase the awareness in society that,
Yeah.
I think people don't know anything about grief. Like, I mean,
Right.
uh, it, I remember one day, I think about 6 months after the accident, I was in the grocery store, and I had met a neighbor right beside us. And I do remember, it was the winter time. You hear about accidents on the radio, and I did
Mhm.
hear about this particular accident of in another town 15 minutes down the road, of an entire family that was killed coming back from Florida. And so I met this neighbor, and she had a connection with this family. And "Hi, Linda, how you doing?" And the reaction is, "I'm fine." Meanwhile,
Mhm.
that's we're
We're just
programmed to
we're
say that
dying inside, but
it's just what we do.
yep,
And
yep.
so, she said to me, she said, "Well, at least you just have one person to grieve. Can you imagine?" I know. So,
You didn't even finish that sentence before my head for anyone not watching this on video, before my head went into my hand and was like,
I
"Oh
know,
my
and
god,
I
stop
was
the madness."
I thought I was like, I have anger has been the ugliest
Yeah,
part of grief for me,
of
and
course.
that was in my fresh anger,
Yeah,
and
yeah, that's so I
I
mean,
had to
6
make
months
a
after.
very, very quick exit,
Yep,
you know okay, so I don't even remember what I said, but I exited from the conversation very quickly because I don't know what I
yep,
would have done. I really don't,
yeah,
because it was just a horrible thing to say, like, to
yeah,
to make my grief less because it's one versus like,
to
if
just
just an
minimize the
example. That's
ever
just an
living.
example of society and people and
Yeah,
what they say. And, my thing is, if you don't know what to say, just keep your mouth shut.
yep. Just say, I'm here to hold space and listen." I mean, my god, anything other than
Yeah.
those. At least no, there's no silver lining here, and if anybody wants to, like, tap into the silver lining, that's not something we can impose on someone grieving. If
Mhm.
they wanna if they can get there themselves, if they wanna, have the say those at least statements to themselves, okay, fine, like, that's
Yeah.
your prerogative, your journey. There is a part of me now that's like, after hearing so many stories of grief and there are so many things that I'm actually very grateful for now that, like, I do recognize that I did have my parents longer than other people have that. So I can say to myself, at least I had loving, compassionate, beautiful, amazing parents
Mhm.
for as long as I did. Like, I can say that to myself,
Mhm.
but, like, no one else is allowed to say that to me. Like, that's for me to figure out and
Well,
me
that's right,
to
and that's part of
feel
the grief
if
journey,
I
learning
yeah,
appreciation, right?
yeah.
I mean, I've gone it's been 13 years, so, that
Mhm.
under that grief umbrella, there's nothing I haven't experienced, the
Right.
PTSD, the trauma, the depression, anxiety, all of those emotions, and a lot of them become lifelong. I mean, I
Yes.
still deal with anxiety, I still deal with depression on a different level than 13 years ago, right? But I
Of
still
course.
deal with it. I never had that before, and so
Yeah.
that's what grief has given me. But I forgot my train of thought, what we were talking about now.
I know, there's so many. Well, actually, this is perfect segue, and first of all, thank you so much for being so honest about what you've been feeling and mentioning PTSD and depression, anxiety, anger, all of these things, because I think it's very validating to anyone here listening who
Mhm,
is currently has in the past experienced those things. Just to kind of bridge the gap to where, okay, like, so your daughter dies that day to, like,
mhm.
where you are now. Can you just walk us through, like, what I mean, let's just start there. Okay, so your daughter dies, like, what then? What happened? Can you walk me through those first, like,
Well,
few months or years?
my husband stayed home with me for about a month, and he was pretty much my caregiver.
Mhm,
I was heavily medicated,
mhm.
and, I always say it was, like I had an out of body experience. It was me. I could feel my heart beating and I knew that I was here, but I could
Yeah,
feel myself looking in on everyone else, him, my
yep,
family, anyone that was around me. I was completely detached.
yep,
That part of my brain, I was completely detached. So I was just in my world of the deepest pain I had ever known.
mm,
And I needed guidance. I don't know what I would have done if it wasn't for him. I He would just tell me, "So when's the last time you showered?" "I don't know."
like, I don't know. Who
"When's
cares?
when's the
You're
last
like,
time you brushed my teeth?" "I don't know." "So it's time to eat now." "Okay, I'll eat. Now you can go back to bed." Like, it was just
wow,
an existence. I just existed.
yeah,
And because
just surviving.
you're so wrapped
Mhm,
up in the emotional trauma that you don't think about your physical body, your
mhm.
physical existence. right?
Right.
That's why I always say it's very important for someone who's grieving, who's been through this, that they need to stay very close to their physician, their family doctor, because if you had conditions like high blood pressure, diabetes, or conditions before where you needed to take medication, you're not going to be taking those medications because you don't
Mm.
think about those normal things that we take for granted that we do every day. It's not, it's obsolete. It's not even in your mind.
Yeah,
And
if you don't have someone reminding you to do those things or even an alarm, I mean, literally anything, and, like, you
yeah,
who can be bothered to set an alarm? Like,
yeah, yeah,
just
and
all
then
those little nuances.
he came home when even when he did go back to work, he lives close by that every day he comes home for lunch anyway.
Mm.
So it would be like he'd come home, he'd make my lunch, I'd go back to bed, he'd come home, and then, gradually, whether we want it to or not, time has a way of, bringing us through that passageway of time, and
Yeah.
so the weeks go into months, and the months go into years, right? But
Yeah.
eventually, I hooked up with a support group, and in those days, I'm going to age myself. I mean, there wasn't much Zoom then. I
Yeah.
belong to lots of Zooms now, but in those days, it was an in-person support group, and it was Bereaved Moms, just about 6 or 7 of us, and
Mhm.
I hooked up with that group. That became my lifeline up until COVID, and
Mhm.
then it just kinda dissipated. I stayed connected with my family doctor who adjusted all the medications, and she was wonderful. It was just, at first it was weekly, and then every 2 weeks, and then just depending on my needs, and, every time I went to see her, I would just shed those tears and cry, and, I'd have that space where I felt comfortable to do that. And then
Mhm.
I had counseling, and I had the same counselor, and some people may shake their head and think, "What? The same counselor for 9 years." 9
Wow.
years I had counseling
Oh my
because it
gosh. I
was
was gonna ask you about that if you went to therapy or counseling and s which
mhm.
is amazing. That's so great. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, and it was after the 9 years, walking was a big thing for me. I slowly
Yeah.
started stepping out the door, looking at the sky, and, the little glimmers of hope creep
Yeah.
in, and,
Yeah.
eventually, it became more than stepping out. It was like, I'm gonna go for a walk around the block, and then it became therapeutic that I walked 45 minutes a day, and,
That's
that was so, so healing for me, and so after my 9 years, I was came back from a walk one day and said, "That's it. I'm gonna write a book." My husband said, "Well, do it. That's great."
okay.
Okay. And I'm like, "But there's one problem. I was a nurse for 37 years, gonna date myself again, and
Mhm.
everything we did was writing." There was not much computers came into the picture later, but all of our
Yeah.
documentation, everything was writing. I'm like, "I know
Yeah.
nothing about computers. How am I gonna write a book?"
Oh my gosh.
He says, "Well, you just, sit behind the computer and open up
Mm.
Word." "What's Word?"
What's word? And you just type. Okay, but what if I'm, like, slow at typing? It's like yeah, that's so
Yeah,
funny. There's
yeah.
yeah,
So he was my
barriers to
guide.
entry.
He was my guide, and,
Oh.
that's how I wrote my book, right?
Wow.
But,
Okay, so I definitely wanna talk about your book in a little bit, but I have to ask because I'm still kind of like, "Oh my
yeah,
gosh,
yeah,
how did you
we don't
even move through these years?" But I wanna ask because you've brought up your husband multiple times. He sounds like an absolute angel, and you just sound so fortunate to have such a
I'm
wonderful
really,
partner with
really blessed because I know, and I know people. Like, not everybody has what I had.
that's what I was about to say. Yeah,
Right? And
yeah.
so I'm really blessed because I don't know what I would have done without him, right? I mean,
Yeah, almost
it
scary to think about probably in some cases,
it
like,
it
"Oh my
is,
gosh."
it is, and I know that there are a lot of people out there suffering and a lot of people going through, even mental health, depression,
Yeah,
anxiety, and all of those things. I can relate to that now on a level that I could never relate before, even
of course.
suicidal ideation. I mean, I've been there, done that too, right?
That's very
And,
scary.
so but for those people who don't have somebody in their daily life, I just can't imagine. I always say, find someone,
Yeah,
find someone, one person, even if it's one person that you can connect with, right? And that's why I
yeah.
stress the importance of a doctor and counseling and support
Mhm.
and all of those things because you just
Yeah.
can't do it alone.
No, absolutely not. It's yeah, I mean, as the human psyche, I mean, we can only kind of I mean, we could do a lot ourselves, but I think in situations like this, you really do need just like you said, just support or even if someone can never understand our unique pain because, unfortunately,
Grief
many,
is
many people lose children, but it's never going to be your child, right? And we need to honor how sacred that is. But there's definitely, I would say a lot of themes of grief that can kind of be the same across the board, and
mhm,
at least have people around you that can hold space, and even if they can't really understand, literally just having some idea because we can also have a great support system, but it could be full of people who have never lost a child. Like my husband has never lost a parent, right? But here I am without two and now raising a child without my parents. And, that's very complex. And so
mhm.
he's amazing and wonderful and very supportive,
Well,
but
it's the listening ear. It's having
different.
somebody to just,
Yeah.
like you say, take that space for you, give you that time. I have a stepdaughter who lived. She lives. We have provinces in Canada, and you have
Mhm.
states. So
Yeah.
3 provinces away, like not a car drive away. And
Right.
so she became a real lifeline for me as well. I would
Mhm.
phone her and I would just cry and scream and cry
Aw.
and then I would apologize. She said, "No, I'm still here. I'm listening. I'm here for you." And
Aw.
she was just such a support beyond what I can describe. I mean,
That's
and
wonderful.
she was my stepdaughter. I mean, she was in pain too, but it was her stepsister, but she was there for me. And so, like I said, even just one person, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Really quickly, the one other thing I was gonna ask you about your husband is just because I was not even married at the time that my parents died, but I was with my now husband, but we actually broke up a little bit for that period of time. We got back together, but the point being, loss can really wreak havoc on relationships and marriages and
Oh,
partnerships and everything, and, to say the very least. And so I was curious, like, how did that affect you both as a married couple? Did it can tear people apart, it can bring people closer together, so, like, what was the dynamic like, for your marriage?
well, for the first 3 years, I say, like,
Mhm.
it was just me, 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 me.
Yeah.
It was me. It was like, and my anger, I would thrash out at him and say, "You don't
Mhm.
understand. You don't understand." And then my husband is the stepfather of Andrea. But when
Right.
we got together, Andrea was just turning 13. And when Andrea got married, her relationship with her biological father was kind of up and down and in
Mhm.
and out and all over the place. He was always there for her, but it was just one of those relationships that was really difficult to have. And
Mhm.
so my husband became her father. She had two fathers. And so when she got married, they both walked her down the aisle. And her
Aw.
biological father got upset, and she said, "Pff, sucks to be you. Suck it up,
Yep,
buddy."
suck it up.
Yeah, so she adored my husband, and he
Aw.
loved her, right? And so
Yeah.
they had a beautiful relationship, and, he didn't deserve how I treated him. He really didn't,
Aw.
right? I would, be angry and tell him, "You don't understand. It's not your daughter." And I was horrible. I was
Aw.
horrible, and that man,
Yeah,
he was just there all the time. Like, just, you
that's so
know,
special.
our relationship, I would say we're closer now than ever. I mean, it's all those rough times that just we
Yeah.
have been through so much in 28 years that people
Mhm.
married like 40 years have been through less than what we've been through, right? He lost his
Yeah.
mother, I lost my mother, I lost my
Mhm.
mother 4 years ago, Andrea, just and it's being through those hard times, yet like you say, sometimes it tears people apart. For us,
Mhm.
we just meshed because we're the same people. I'm just lucky. He's
Yeah.
beautiful.
I feel like, communication is always important in a relationship, but I think that was one of the biggest things that I found was and hindsight's 2020, I didn't know this at the time, but, like and I didn't know even how to communicate the depth of heartbreak I was feeling at the time, and there was no way for him to understand because he's never really lost anyone close to him. Like, he lost, like, a grandfather that he saw, like, twice in his life, wasn't close to.
Mm.
There's just and it's not what I
That's
realize
difficult,
is
that's difficult.
it's so different, yeah, and not that, that life doesn't mean as much, but you get it, it's different. But I kinda chastised him a little bit for, like, not being able to understand, and then I just kinda had it wasn't an aha moment, but I gradually was like, "It's not his fault. He can't relate to me. Thank God he can't relate to me. That means he still has 2
Well,
alive and happy and healthy parents, and that's unfortunately not my journey, but, like, it's also I can't take this out on him. That's also not fair. I need to find other outlets, and that's where, like, sometimes I think we, finally get on these healing journeys where we so to speak, always healing, I think, but, that we start to, with time, not that time heals all wounds, but I think you're right, time definitely helps,
time
realize
teaches. I always
some of
say
these
time
things.
is the great teacher. Time doesn't heal,
T
but time
Absolutely.
teaches.
Completely agree with that, and that was one of the things it taught me was, to because loss also, I think for many of us, just evokes this new layer, if you will, of empathy and compassion perhaps that we might have had, but didn't have quite like we had
Well,
before, and just
I
for
I deal with, myself just personally, and I don't beat myself up too much about it, but every once in
Mhm.
a while, the guilt will kinda creep in, and,
Yeah.
like, I was horrible, but I was in a situation where I had never been before, and I didn't know
Right. You
how to
don't know
react,
what you don't
and
know.
I did the best I could at the time type deal,
Mhm.
right? My
Yep.
relationship with Andrea's biological sister went down the tubes, and in those
Mhm.
first 3 years, I had complicated grief, prolonged grief,
Of
because
course.
so many things outside of losing Andrea and my future grandchild, you know,
Mhm. Yes.
they affected what I was going through. My grandson, her 2-year-old little boy, we had 2 court cases in within the 3 years that didn't
Gosh.
settle until the end of 3 years, and the court case for the trucker, and we ended up taking my her husband to court for access to my grandson because he didn't
Oh.
think it was necessary that we saw him. Meanwhile, I babysat him.
Oh.
I was there when he was born. I'm very much part of my grandchildren's lives, and
Mhm.
if I couldn't see him, I told my husband, if I can't see, his name is Tristan. If I can't see
Mhm.
Tristan, I might as well die. Like, he's my
Yeah.
only little piece of
It's the
Andrea, right?
only little
Yeah,
connection.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
And there are no grandparent laws in Ontario. And both his lawyer and our lawyer, told us repeatedly, "You're not going to win this. You're not going to win this. You're wasting your money." I said, "I don't care if I mortgage my house, if I have to live in," like, I didn't care, right?
Yeah.
I had to see him, and of course we won, right?
Oh, thank
Because it was,
God.
well,
But how many things must you also deal with on top of the death of your loved one that complicate that grief even more? Like, I didn't certainly go through, like, court cases like that, but, like, I had to go through probate, which in California is a nightmare, and so it's just those types
oh,
of things
that's
that, like
that's very stressful, yes.
oh, it's so stressful, and I'm an only child, so I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I was at the mercy of, a accountant and a lawyer who I just had to trust that were telling me the right things and,
And you're just
you
out
know
to sea without a paddle, and you don't know where you're going or what you're
absolutely.
doing, right?
Yeah, and I'm just like, "I'm too young for this." Like, where I was like, 27, 28 at the time, like, whatever age I
Oh my
was, but, like,
gosh.
I
Yeah.
don't care how young like, age is truly just a number when you lose someone, like,
Oh,
you
yeah.
just, like, revert back to, like, your youth, and you're just like, "I'm not an adult enough for this. I can't," like
Yeah.
and in
You
my case,
just
the 2 people that I needed the most that I would have gone to in that situation
that would have
were
helped you.
dead.
Right.
I'm like, "Wow, this is
Yeah.
not where I wanna be."
It's like you're in this nightmare, and
Twilight
you
Zone.
just want
Yeah.
to wake up
Yep.
and have the nightmare over, and you get up, and it's day after day after day, and that nightmare, it's
Just
not a
never
nightmare, it eventually becomes reality that sinks into your head, right?
yep,
And,
absolutely.
It's very difficult.
Oh, all right. Well, let's talk about your beautiful book. And can you just tell us a little slightly happier note, right? Just tell us about it. What people can expect, how just it flowed out of you. I mean, just give
Well,
us
I
all.
just, somebody asked me what inspired you to write a book. I'm not still say, I'm not a writer, right? I'm a nurse. That's all I know. All I know is
Yeah.
medical jargon, right? And
Right.
so bring it that was part of how I decided to write my book is first of all, I'll say in those first 6 months, I was born and raised in a Christian home and I believe in heaven and I believe that's where Andrea is and I believe I'm
Mhm.
going to see her again. But it's like I needed confirmation. So every book I read was about near death experiences and I wanted to
Mhm.
hear about all people's their stories and what they said heaven was like. And so this one day I picked up this book and it was written by a neurosurgeon who had experienced near death. Can't
Mm.
remember the name of the book, but I thought, "Oh, that's no problem. I'll understand all that medical jargon, right? No problem." And I read 2 chapters maybe, and I couldn't understand anything. My poor old grief brain was like,
Oh,
"Whoa,
yeah.
you can't take this in. You can't
Too much right
understand
now.
this, Linda," right? Because even though I was a nurse for 37 years, some people might say, "Well, you dealt with death." I held the hands of people that passed on. I dealt
Oh,
with
that's
family members.
different.
There is no preparation for anything like
No.
that when it becomes personal. So anyway, when I sat down to write my book, I said, I want to write a book that's relatable. And I want it's going to be written from a broken-hearted mama. And it's going to be
Mhm.
as though I'm talking to you now and you just lost your child or you just lost your parents. And, this is what grief is. These are the things that you're going to feel and just all about grief, my journey, and
Mhm.
in relation all of those things in relation together, the depression, talking about it, and this is how depression was with me, this is anxiety, this is how anxiety was with me. And first of all,
Mhm.
to know that grief is as unique as your fingerprint.
Yes.
It's unique to all of us, and that you're not going crazy. And I thought I was going crazy, and you're not
Yeah.
going crazy. It has affected your brain, the
The literal chemistry of your brain. Yeah.
Absolutely, and I didn't know that at the time. It took many years to figure
Same.
that one out, right? But I wanted to write my book that it was just an easy read for a person who was hurting and had a grief brain. And
Yep.
so I decided to use the framework of the road of love and hope. And it's about
Mhm.
love and it's about hope. And the picture on the book is me walking on this rocky road with huge boulders. And of course, we're on this road, like I was saying, in the sea without a paddle. You're on this
Yeah.
road, you don't know where you're going,
Mhm.
there's no destination.
Yep.
And you have no idea, and you just know that you're walking over all of this crap.
Yeah.
And the clouds are there, they're dark, but the rays of sun are shining. So behind
Mhm.
every dark cloud, behind every storm, the sun will shine. And that's hope. And that's kind of how the book was, about grief, about my journey, and then working towards hope. But every chapter was pertaining to, like, the first chapter is the boulder. That's when it
Yeah.
happened. And then other chapters, the path of perseverance, this path, that path, family things. And that's pretty much how I wrote it. And then every
Makes
chapter
sense.
I had a quote before, and at the end of every chapter is just for today. So just for today, shed those tears because tears mean love.
Mhm.
Simple things like that.
Yeah. I love that. It's so relatable and it really breaks it down for people. I really appreciate the fact and it's something you definitely have to go through to really experience is that really catered to, like you said, the people with grief brain who really just need something that feels relatable, makes them feel less alone
Some
for even a
Yeah,
minute.
like I have someone in Newfoundland, which is the absolute eastern part of Canada, and she
Mhm.
said she has read the book, but she uses it kind of like a daily thing and highlights certain areas that when she's feeling bad, she can go and refer to that part of my book. And I'm like, when I sat down to write my book, I had no idea where it was going to go. I had
Yeah.
no idea. And I said, you know what? If I can help one person who is feeling what I'm feeling, who has is experiencing this horrible life that I have. If I can help them,
Yeah.
then it's going to be it'll I will have accomplished what I set out to do, and it's been more than that. So,
Beautiful. Oh my gosh. And it's so probably so cathartic for people to read, but also for you also. And it sounds
mhm,
like that really your book, as you said, like has given you like new
mhm.
purpose, sort of a new lease on life, so to speak. And it's not that
Oh,
you'll it
it
makes
has.
your daughter's destiny easier. It's nothing is ever like that. And I always say, with grief work and finding the right coping tools for us and all of these things, it doesn't negate any pain we're feeling. It doesn't make us feel better about what has
Pain
happened,
the
but
pain is always there,
yeah.
I don't believe there are stages. You will always
Oh,
have to
absolutely not.
you will always have to deal with all of those things under the umbrella of grief, like depression,
Yeah.
anxiety. You're always gonna have sad moments. You're always gonna have days when you just wanna stay in bed and you can't do anything today, right? You're always gonna have those anxiety attacks where triggers will remind you, and then it'll bring
Mhm.
you back to that dark moment. That always
Yes.
13 years later, and I'm still coping with those. Maybe the frequency is less,
Yeah.
I can say with hope to some people that the
Yeah.
frequency is less, and that time teaches you after you've experienced those things over and over and over, time teaches you how to climb out of that big dark hole, right?
Yes. It
And
does.
so you become an experienced griever, I guess you could say.
Oh, I like that. I've never really heard that phrase, but I love that. Yeah, you have some time and some wisdom under your belt a little bit, and you just
Yeah,
know that, like
yeah.
and the intensity, I'm gonna use the term lessons very loosely
The
here, but, like,
yeah,
I think a lot of people, especially if they're listening here, you're in, kind of like earlier stages, like, I think a lot of people worry that the shock's never gonna wear off or that we're always gonna be so in unspeakable pain for so long. And like, yes, the pain's always going to be there. I think a lot of people, kind of refer to the analogy of like, like a wound or something, you have like a big gash in your arm or something, right? And it's like,
mhm,
it's just as that would heal. And it's like, there might be a scar there, or it might always kind of bother you on a day it rains or something like that. But like,
yeah,
you do learn to carry it and hold space for it and kind of just get to know it and know what it needs. But I think that's what's really important is that we have that when we're ready, that openness and that curiosity about like what it can teach us. And not that it's
yeah.
all about life lessons, but like when we're open to it, like what really struck me, what you said earlier was when you went on your walks, and walks are really big for me too. So I really love that. And you never know like what downloads you might get, so to speak,
Well,
or
during those
what
walks, that was my time. I
yeah,
allowed grief to have its space then. Even
that's
though I'm
great.
taking care of myself physically, and
Yeah,
well, I mean, we all know what walking can do for your body physically,
yeah.
emotionally, and everything, but essentially it was giving grief the space. So I would cry, I
Mm.
scream, I usually go into like a factory area where it's not
That
residential.
can't be heard really.
So I'm like, and I don't care, right?
Oh,
I've learned over the years,
yeah,
I really don't care. And
yeah,
so, I
good.
allow my thoughts to come in. I allow myself to think about Andrea, and I talk to her and I argue with God and I scream and I cry. And after I
Yep.
come home, I'm ready to take on that next afternoon or that next chapter,
Mhm.
right?
Yep, it's all just moment by moment, as you were saying. I mean, for you at one point, literally, it was breath to breath, right? And so I think
That's
you're an amazing example of how, it could still be very moment by moment for a lot of us, and depending on what's going on, or, if something does trigger us, even years down the line, it's like, okay, how do I get through this right now? Okay, like, and we learn ways to move
one
through
of
it.
the analogies that I used in my book was I had so many stories within me that just had to kind of be purged onto paper into
Yeah.
words. And so one of the analogies that I used was one of my puppies that I had, a Yorkie, and I have had them for 4 years. So there
Mhm.
is no excuse for this. But anyway, this one
Mhm.
particular dog I have, when I put his harness on him to take him outside for a walk, he hides.
Mhm.
He doesn't like the harness. 4 years later, still can't. I have to go pick him up and take him downstairs to put the harness on him, and then while I'm getting my shoes on and he's waiting there, he's shivering and he's shivering. It's like, I
Sweet
don't know
baby.
why, I have no idea. But then when I open the door and we go for a walk, then he sees life as he should, and he forgets about that harness, and
Oh,
it's all over. So
yeah.
grief is like that. It's in our body, around our body, and it moves with all of our movements, and we just learn how to live
Yes,
with it. We just learn
absolutely,
how to
and
live with it, right?
carrying it, yeah. That's a cute analogy. I love that, and also I just love Yorkies, so that's just, like, such a fun little visual. That's so sweet.
Yeah.
Well, just to wrap up, I love kinda sometimes ending with this question and, for again, I'm so inspired by you and just of course your book, but just the I get progress that you have seemed to make after such, again, just an unspeakably difficult loss.
Mhm.
If somebody is here listening, and so this can be, whether it's loss of a child, specifically, if you want to focus on that, or just like someone that is just really deeply struggling with their grief right now, or seeing the hope, the light at the end of the tunnel, if you will.
Mhm.
What tip, piece of guidance, word of wisdom, however you want to frame it, would you say to that person listening who just needs some
Mhm.
encouragement right now?
Well, first of all, I'll just say quickly that after all these years, I was laying awake one night and I thought, there's got to be some, because I'm working on a second book, and I thought, there's got to be some
Amazing.
kind of framework here, right? Like, what exactly have you done, Linda? How have you gotten to where you are, right?
Yeah.
And I'm in
Yeah.
bed. Insomnia is one of the other things that I
Oh
do.
gosh, yeah.
And so I decided I came up with this AAA concept of acknowledgement, action, and appreciation.
Mm,
So for someone who's grieving, they need to know, first of all, with acknowledgement, that you need to acknowledge that pain. You need
yes.
to acknowledge every emotion, the depression, the crying, the anger, the screaming, the finding
Mhm.
a healthy outlet for it. But you
Yeah.
need to acknowledge the anxiety, all of those things,
Yeah.
and not be worried about shedding the tears. It's like facing your and fears. You just have to. There's no way around grief. You just have to go through it. And so acknowledging those things they validate your loss, they validate your love, they validate, for me, it validates my love story, validates the
Mhm.
fact that Andrea, I had her for 27 years,
Yeah.
so acknowledgement. And then with the actions, you start out by setting small, achievable goals.
Mhm.
And even if it means tomorrow, I'm going to shower, or
Yep.
tomorrow I'm going to have that cup of coffee, and I'm going to actually think about what it tastes like.
Yeah.
Small, achievable goals. And with that being said, you have to be very kind and
Mhm.
gentle and compassionate to yourself, and understand that if you don't achieve those goals, there's always another time to try. And
Yep.
then by doing that, it brings you into the present moment, and
Mhm.
slowly hope creeps in. And
Yeah.
then when that happens, those achievable goals get to be bigger, and we get to accomplish more. And then we develop an appreciation for life, and for me, grief is ugly, grief is messy,
Mhm.
but grief taught me a lot. And one of the biggest things that grief taught me was that life is a gift.
Yes.
We are gifted with life. And we need to, yesterday is gone,
Yeah.
tomorrow may never come. So the only little piece of time that we have is
Right.
today,
Right now. Yeah.
right? This moment. So
Yeah.
it's about living in the moment and doing the best that you can with that moment. And even if it means in the early times of stepping out the door, like I said,
Yeah.
and looking at the blue sky and feeling the warmth of the sun, right? Or if it means you hydrate yourself and you've had a glass of water, it could mean whatever that looks like for you, right? Those
Mhm.
those those things allow you to appreciate life and let hope enter in.
So beautifully said. I don't think I could have said any of that better, and that is, like, the exact advice I would give to someone too, and truly those little I'm gonna call them rituals, those little moments, like, for me, especially in the morning, because I think the morning, as you know, can be so difficult for people who are grieving. You wake up, you're
Mhm,
hit with the reality of whatever it is that you've been through, be it
mhm,
the loss of a loved one or anything else, and you are faced with another entire day ahead of you where
mhm,
you now have to deal with this new reality. That is so difficult, to say
mhm,
the very least. So I think that's beautiful advice, having
mhm,
something, and I love how you use this example I use a lot too. It's just like, and I'm a big, like, latte and cappuccino girl. So
mhm.
I'm like, if I, am drinking my coffee, like, really sitting with that, feeling the heat of the cup on your hands and
And it's
the
it's u
taste and
it's utilizing your senses,
your
and
senses.
when
Yes,
you utilize
exactly.
I talk about this in my book too. When you utilize
Yeah,
your senses,
yeah,
you're grounding yourself and keeping yourself grounded to the present moment,
yep,
and pulling yourself away from that negative to the positive for just a moment or
yep,
2, right?
yep,
A
and then it's
motto that
just
I a
mm,
motto that I have come up with too for my over the years for my grief is, and I think I'm gonna put it on T-shirts or something, is embrace the moments. Whatever
yeah,
those moments look like for you, embrace the
mhm,
moments.
yeah,
Cherish the memories, because the memories that cause tears right now will bring a smile later, and
mm,
that was your special time, your moment in time with that person that you're missing. So cherish the memories and make more, and by doing
mhm.
that, we have hope for tomorrow.
Yeah, and we're living in a way that honors them and carries them with us, and, we can't have both. I know a lot of people, I have clients too that struggle with, like, feeling like they're moving forward without their loved ones, like, and they feel guilt around that, or they're just like, "How can I be so happy when, these people that I loved so deeply are gone?" And it's like,
I had those feelings too. I was
yeah,
going through that, right? But I've
yeah,
learned over time that, I try to use my senses for Andrea. When I'm at the beach
mhm.
and I feel my toes in the sand, I talk to her and say, "Andrea, this feels so good. I'm
Oh,
doing
I
this
love
for
that.
you." Or I feel the warm breeze off the ocean, and I'm like, "Andrea, I feel this for you." So I experience those things, but I do it for her. And by doing that, she's with me.
Yeah, and you're doing it for you too, and what a beautiful way to honor her. Oh, I love that so much. I'm gonna try that next time I'm in somewhere when I have this moment where I can kinda channel my mom and dad a little bit that way. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Linda, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and sharing Andrea with all of us today, and all of the wonderful things that you have said to, just help process and things to keep in mind, and mindset shifts and perspective shifts to
Mhm, mhm.
keep in mind or try, or, I always joke, like, keep in the back of our head for later if we're not ready to hear it right now. Like, I think the more
It's true.
that fellow grievers hear these things and hear it from enough people, and people who've been through some really incredibly difficult things, like, they might start to believe it, that we can get here, and, I think a lot of people can see themselves in you in so many ways. So, I'm so appreciative to you, and thank you so much
Thank
for
you for
joining us
having
today.
me. Thank you for this opportunity because
Of
it's
course.
always warms my heart to talk about my baby girl,
Of
right? And
course.
then with that,
Yeah,
if I can reach out and help somebody, even just one person,
yeah.
right? Then that's part of my healing journey and part of my new purpose. And by the way, my book is on Amazon, The Road of Love and Hope.
Yes, okay, so that was gonna be my very last thing, was where can people, so okay, so that's on Amazon, that's great, and this is all gonna be linked in the show notes, by the way, but where can people connect with you too? Can they follow you on social media anywhere, or where can
I'm
they
on
kinda get in touch with you?
Instagram, Linda Henderson 5044. Linda Henderson, just Linda Henderson is my author page. Linda Wesley Henderson is my active Facebook page. And my email is L Henderson, HenderSon 24 at cogeco.ca. And anybody can email me if they want to get information, chat, fill down, anything. I'm open.
Love it. Thank you so much. Well, I really, again, appreciate your time today and your openness in sharing everything, and just thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you again.
I am sending you a huge thank you for tuning into today's episode, my friend. I'm so grateful you're here and for the steps you're taking to heal your heart, open your mind, fulfill your soul, learn, grow, and evolve, and move through this crazy thing called life in big, beautiful, impactful ways. Visit lossesbecomegains.com for my blog, more coping tools, ways to work with me, and so much more. And be sure you're following along on Instagram and Facebook at Losses Become Gains, and on Instagram and TikTok at Life with Grief Podcast. I love seeing new faces, meeting new people, hearing your stories, and supporting you however I can. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and share this episode or this podcast with someone who could use it too. And remember to always keep asking yourself, how will I turn my losses into gains today? I'll catch you in the next episode.